Ransom, Joseph Potter here on Restream, and we're going to break down the Texans-Ravens in our Texans versus Ravens, who advances to the AFC Championship YouTube video. And you look at the Texans, Lisa did secure first place on the year. I'm still tied with Tyler Sullivan for CBS, but I can move into the top 5 since one of the people that had 181 did not make wild card picks. Another person tied, and Emmy Bantle and Sue Stoltenberg are both at 183 and 95. Lisa's 193 and 85 with a 10-game lead and 7 playoff games to go. So that makes it mathematically impossible for anybody in the country to catch Lisa. I'm trying to get in the top 5. Kerm is trying to get in the top 10. He's at 15 right now. Jason and Tanya are tied for another week. Wes and Brian are tied. Tracy is 8th. Jesse is 9th. But Jesse is moved into the top 25. It's nuts. Jesse was behind Oren most of the year. Now he's in the top 25. But yeah, let's focus on this game, and then Joey and Oren round out the group. But yeah, Texans. CJ Stroud, second pick in the NFL draft out of Ohio State. He's had a very dominant rookie year. I mean, he has really stepped up, and then the Texans' offensive line has stepped up. You've had George Fant put together his best year at right tackle, Michael Dieter, and, Fant missed weeks 16 through 18, but came back for the wild card round. Texans just dominated against the Browns. Nico Collins is going to be the number 1. You have Woods as the number 2. Noah Brown slot. John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson are the backup receivers with Tank Dell out for the season. And Nico Collins has just been on fire since Stroud's return to the lineup. You have Dalton Schultz. You have Brevin Jordan as the backup tight end.
Well, we're on the subject of Nico Collins and how he did against the Browns. Something I found out about Nico Collins for the Browns is that he is not great on the outside, but when you move him around, you get him on the outside once, inside another time, the other side there, he creates mismatches. He is a mismatch nightmare. Again, put him in one spot, he's above average. Move him around, you get him in the slot, you get him on the outside, you get him doing different things, you make teams look for him. He is a physical mismatch, and he's going to take advantage of it. So there's that about Nico Collins that I found out against the Browns. Is like, if you move him around, oh, he's going to be a force.
I'm not sure if I played this, Joey, but this is my Nico Collins interview from the 2021 Senior Bowl. I think I've played a few other interviews. I don't think I played the Nico Collins one. It's only 5 minutes. It's not like...
Hey, go ahead. I mean, Nico's on it.
I guess probably one of your first weeks of practice in a little bit, right? Steve, how's it feeling for you? It feels great. It feels great to come back and play football again. I opted out this season, but it feels great to come out here and compete with some of the best football players in college football. Anything you miss specifically? Football. Yeah, yes, sir. Were there any concerns because it had been a while? No, not at all. No, sir, not at all. Just kind of get my groove back, to get off. First day was kind of rust, getting that rust off, and as the week went on, it got better. We improved. Oh yeah, yes sir, most of the time. Yes sir. My reason was, I came back my senior year and ended up canceling the season just for Purdue, and then nobody was assuming uncertainties. Nobody knew next time we would play, and so I felt like I was in no man's land. So that's when I sat down with my family and I had to make a decision. I mean, yeah, it's always room to improve my game. You know, I try to mainly outside X. You know, this year, you know, it's often I really focus on trying to stay in the slot. You know, move around and move positions. You know, getting an opportunity on the field. You feel like you're really like one of those teams to see about you. I can do it all. I'm not just one position. You know, I can special teams. You know, we'll do whatever for the team. Well, thank you. Appreciate you. Who you try to mold your game after? Is it like an old teammate like Donovan Peoples-Jones, or who you watch on film and you try to? Mike Evans. Yeah, come on, right?
Jump balls that you've been winning here and 1v1 team drills here. So you got Steve Taylor, also kind of a tall guy. What are you looking for there in terms of tall on tall?
You know, just great competition. You know, the lowest man win. You know, best release. You know, I'm kind of tall, so you know, that's kind of a advantage for getting hands in my chest. That's one thing I try to focus on, staying low, and you know, the ball in the air. You know, my mindset, that's mine. Coming down with it. So, yes, sir. Well, a lot. Yeah, one of them. Yeah, some. I have never picked. I haven't yet. No problem. How do you struggle? How do you prepare to get to here? You know, after I opted out, you know, I've really studied and focused on my game. You know, I really critique myself for things I need to improve on to become an overall better receiver. You know, some things like that I really focus on.
Anybody being starstruck a little bit?
Starstruck?
Yeah, like anybody. I know you say Andy the Patriots, but there is a Bill Belichick effect when he walks in the building.
Yeah. You know, I don't know. I haven't been yet. I haven't been. Sir.
What's like the lineup across the NFL? I'm sure it's everybody.
Everybody
stands out.
Taylor Ramsey.
There you go.
Yeah.
You might regret that.
I want it though. I mean, it's all good. Yeah, he's the best, man. He's the best defensive back in the league, man, to me. So I feel like we go against the best, and you end up getting better. Can't be afraid to compete. Can't be afraid. So. Appreciate it. Good. Right, y'all see that. I got y'all.
That's the human. A little better angle for us, huh? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anybody didn't get their phone? Make sure I grab the right one.
I've never had a phone left over.
Somebody just left their phone.
Let me check down here. No worries, thank you. Yeah, I just have Patrick right here, but someone got their phone? Nobody?
I got so many.
Yeah, that's mine. Thanks.
Yeah, the reason I didn't get the chance to ask him a question is because I brought my microphone and my cell phone to the Senior Bowl, so I give the and that was the COVID year. You had to put your cell phone in like a bin for the media reporters. So I had my cell phone in the bin ready to record, and then I was able to take my microphone over to another interviewee and interview multiple players at the same time. But Nico Collins killed it in that interview. You knew he was the guy 30 seconds into the interview, and then once he talked about how he watches Mike Evans on film, you knew he was the guy. It was just a matter of him getting the right quarterback. And then he finally took off this year in year 3 once he got the quarterback, which is normal for most receivers that get picked in the 3rd round of the draft. But I really do believe he's that guy. Also, I don't really have anything bad to say about Nico Collins. I'm more critical of the reporters who asked him questions than I am of Nico. And there weren't any horrible questions, just some quick rule of thumb suggestions like maybe think of something more professional to say besides homie. I'm sure Nico was flattered, unfazed, confident, cool as the other side of the pillow. But there's other ways you can address Nico. There's the teams, Senior Bowl interview teams are irrelevant questions now in 2024 because 2023 Nagy set it up so that each player interviews with all 32 teams. So it's just an irrelevant question to ask now. But hey, other than that, I thought the media asked good questions and very informal interview, and Nico killed it. So, which is no surprise. I knew Nico was going to be special once he had the right quarterback because I saw greatness in him, not only in the practice, but in the interview process leading up to the draft. So I'm happy for Nico. But yeah, what was your impression of that interview? Because I think that's the first time I played that interview. And with Tegan Quatoriano injured, Brevin Jordan's the backup, Eric Saubert's the third string tight end. You've got Singletary and Pierce splitting carries. And you got Andrew Beckett fullback. So there's a lot of playmakers on this Houston offense.
It wasn't a bad interview. Obviously the quality of the interviews got better since you're not in the COVID bubble, which we all know everything about that hindered everything going on everywhere. Let's just be honest with you. But it was a good interview. I enjoyed it. And it really showed that, he was kind of mature for the age. And I think that, obviously, growing up a lot more now, with, especially this year with Mika Ryan being his head coach. And Ryan did help him a lot in this last season due to his experience. And he grew up there. So I think college is, the interview was good. And it really showcased, that he was probably more NFL ready than a lot of people would have guessed, simply because of his attitude.
Yep. And then you look at the Texans. They have Greenard. They have Will Anderson Jr. Barnett is the backup. Jerry Hughes is out again, but you still have Majai Sanders, who came in as a situational pass rusher when Greenard got injured in Week 18 against the Colts. Majai would be the backup 43 left end. Malik Collins and Sheldon Rankins are the two starting defensive tackles. You've got Tier Tart and Khalil Davis for depth. Harris, Perriman, Cashman. You have Henry To'oto. Desmond King replaces Shaquille Griffin and Tavier Thomas, who got placed on IR prior to Week 15. Now, there was speculation that Tavier Thomas could return, but he hasn't been activated off of IR reserve. Undrafted free agents like Kadar Hallman and D'Angelo Ross and Chris Boyd, who got cut from the Vikings, would start if anything happened to King, Nelson, or Stingley at corner. But as long as those three are healthy, I think the Texans will be okay. And I think Nelson not playing in Week 16, Will Anderson not playing in Week 16, Gerard Christian not playing in Week 16. That's a big reason why the Browns were able to drop 51 on the Texans. Petir played a lot better in the playoffs compared to the Week 16 matchup. Even though Jimmy Ward, MJ Stewart, and Eric Murray were all on IR against the Browns, DeAndre Houston Carlson, best player on Pro Football Focus among the entire Texans secondary against the Colts, played just as well. And you've got Kareem Jackson and Adrian Amos as your backup safeties for this season. Not great quality, but enough quality to where, okay.
And I don't want anybody to dismiss D'Amico Ryan on what happened here last week and how he approached things, because this is a really interesting thing. They played the clip on ESPN where where Ryan literally called Joe Flacco and told his player where to be on that first pick six because he knew the offense so well. It just shows how
Nelson got the first pick six. He was in the Week 16 game.
How he studies these offenses and
Because Nelson didn't play in Week 16. He played in the playoff game, and he got the first pick six because Stingley was covering Amari Cooper. So, or was
Yeah, and he told the linebacker, back up a few steps, you'll get a pick six. He backed up a few steps, he got a pick six. He knew exactly what was coming. I mean, D'Amico's a smart cookie. He is smart. He will make those type of adjustments and tell people exactly where to be in an offense. I mean, so you got to give D'Amico a lot of credit on that.
You do.
Because he knew what he was doing.
You do. And then I'm going to make the case for why the Ravens are going to win. They have Lamar Jackson, Ronnie Stanley, Simpson at left guard, Linderbaum at 7, Zeitler at right guard, Morgan Moses at right tackle. Makari's the backup left tackle. Malesa Muvali Latu's the backup left guard. Sam Mustafer's the backup center. Ben Cleveland, backup right guard. Daniel Falele, backup right tackle. But Makari's been the swing tackle when either Moses or Stanley's gotten injured. You have Bateman, Beckham, and Zay Flowers as your starters. Your three backups, Nelson Aguilar, Duvernay, and Teelan Wallace, all healthy at wide receiver. So Baltimore's going to be 6 deep at receiver. You have Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar, despite the absence of Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews was a big reason the Ravens won the Week 1 meeting. Dobbins and Keaton Mitchell are injured. You have Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, and then you have Dalvin Cook, who just got added to the Ravens as that number 3 running back. And then it's been Justin Madubuike, Michael Pierce, and Travis Jones at 34, nose tackle, and Clowney at 34. Left end, Odafe Owa and Kyle Van Noy have been the starting outside linebackers, with Tyus Bowser still injured. Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen are quite the tandem at 34, middle linebacker. You have Ojabo for depth once he comes back, but Malik Harrison and Simpson are the backup middle linebackers. I mean, Brandon Stevens did well at field corner against Calvin Ridley, while Marlon Humphrey moved over to play number 2 corner. Marlon Humphrey did not play in Week 1 against the Texans, but, you know, here's the thing. Arthur Millette's going to remain a nickel. Ronald Darby is probably going to play boundary corner in this game. Rock Ya-Sin's, who's the quarter corner, moves up to dime corner. But, you know, you have Kyle Hamilton at strong safety, Marcus Williams at free safety. Geno Stone's the backup safety, but can also be used at nickel. But here's the thing. Marlon Humphrey's been ruled out. Brandon Stevens will be the number 1 corner. Darby will be the number 2. In Week 1, Darby was the number 1 corner. Rock Ya-Sin was the number 2, and Millette was the number 3. So Stevens going to be the number 1 for this game because he played well down the stretch, even supplanting Humphrey as the number 1 corner. But when you think of star corners in the Ravens, you think of Marlon Humphrey. Nico Collins doesn't have to deal with Marlon Humphrey, so he might actually win the one-on-one. And I'd argue that Nico's an emerging star. And I like Stevens, but I wouldn't consider him a star more than a reliable corner. You have Millette, you have Rock Ya-Sin, but Marlon Humphrey is injured. Jalen Armour-Davis, their 2022 third-round pick, is on IR. And Demarius Williams, their 2022 fourth-round pick, who played nickel last year, also on IR. So the Ravens have 7 corners. 1 is inactive. Their best corner, Humphrey, inactive. And then their other 2 corners are on IR. So, you know, if the Texans have 5 receivers on their depth chart and they bring 4 or 5 receiver sets, Stroud will find a mismatch. That's why I think this will be a shootout. Now, Tucker is one of the league's best kickers. Jordan Stout is the punter. The referee for this game is John Hussey. I talked about the referee matchup being the big reason why the Texans would win with Clay Martin last week. John Hussey. Houston got penalized 10 times for 70 yards in the only Texans game officiated by Hussey this year, where Carolina defeated Houston on a field goal. Stroud threw for 160 yards. Bryce Young threw for 220, 240. Stroud had 0 touchdowns, 0 picks against Carolina that week. Bryce Young had 1 touchdown, no picks. The Ravens are favored by 9.5. I still like the Texans to cover, even though the majority of the public's betting on the Texans. Common sense says I should take the Ravens to cover the spread. I'm taking the Texans to cover the spread, but I'm taking the Ravens to win 28-21 Ravens. I will not be surprised if the Texans win this, but I think the Ravens, they just have more to play for. They're due for a home playoff win. you, Ord, and Tracy all did take the Texans to upset the Ravens. So this is not the rest of our staff took the Ravens to win at home. So this is not they're so what are your thoughts on this game after all the data's been presented for both teams? And why do you got the Texans winning?
I think this game is going to be more about the CJ Stroud than anything else. Because last week, the Browns did everything well that Stroud was bad at during the season. Stroud came out there and did well everything he did bad during the regular season and lit up the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL. Now he's got the number 2 ranked defense.
I would argue the Ravens are the number 1 defense over the Browns. The Browns gave up the fewest yards. Can I mention the stats? The Ravens gave up 21 passing touchdowns, fewest in the NFL. The Browns gave up 43 passing touchdowns on the year. That is the stat Ken LeBlanc. And yards allowed. Yards allowed, Joey. Yards allowed. I'm not trying to get into an argument with you. I'm just pointing out that the Browns were number 1 in yards allowed. That's it. That's my only argument, and it's a relevant one. You could say it's not a relevant one.
It's not relevant to what I was saying.
But it's a big argument point.
If he carves up the Ravens the way he did the Browns, we're looking at a potential, walking into next season, potential top 3 quarterback that the Texans will have on their roster. If he carves them up, the Texans will roll into the AFC Championship game. This is all about, this right here is all about CJ Stroud. All about CJ Stroud. Stroud did to the Ravens what he did to the Browns. That means in 2 weeks, 2 consecutive weeks, he will carve up the number 1 and number 2 defense in the NFL.
Yeah, well,
This
here's... Yes.
is all about Stroud. If he does it...
Actually, the Ravens are number 2 in the NFL in passing touchdowns allowed per game. The Texans are number 1 in passing touchdowns. That's according to team rankings, but most passing touchdowns allowed per team. Okay, so 2023 here.
Actually, leads me another question.
No,
Almost totally unrelated. It's like, why the hell do they have a 9.5-point spread if it's going to be a shootout and it's probably going to be a close game?
I'm trying to, I've gone on stat views, I've gone on team rankings, I'm going on NFL.com to try to figure out what teams have allowed the fewest passing touchdowns. This NFL.com says the Texans have allowed the fewest passing touchdowns with 17, and that the Bills and Ravens are tied for 18 passing touchdowns allowed. But for most of the year, the Ravens were number 1. Heading into the Week 18 game, the Ravens were number 1 in this category. So, yeah, that's the point. Because Ken said the Ravens allowed 20 touchdowns and the Browns allowed 43 touchdowns. Well, the Browns actually allowed 23 touchdowns. The Ravens allowed 18. So that's a much smaller gap. And I'm not saying the Ravens allowing fewer touchdowns isn't impressive, but you know, when you say the Ravens only allowed 21 passing touchdowns and the Browns allowed 43, that's a massive gap. NFL.com is saying the Ravens only allowed 18 passing touchdowns in the regular season and the Browns only allowed 23, making the gap. Yes, the Ravens allowed fewer touchdowns than the Browns, and that matters. It's a significant stat, but at the same time, it's not the massive gap that Ken made it out to be. And look, I'm not trying to be critical, Ken. I think he did a good job getting research for that. And I appreciate the research. It makes the conversation for this game more interesting. But I didn't think the gap between... But what surprised me, Joey, is that the gap between the Ravens and Browns for passing touchdowns is only 5 touchdowns. Because Ken made it out to be like they're 20 touchdowns apart. That the Browns gave up 20 more touchdowns than the Ravens. That's what Ken told me, but NFL.com says the Ravens only gave up 5 fewer touchdowns than the Browns, and that the Texans gave up one fewer touchdown than the Ravens. So if NFL.com and team rankings both say that the Texans and Ravens are 1 and 2 in touchdowns allowed, I have to take that as the truth. Because I went on StatMuse, I went on NFL.com, and I went on team rankings. All while compiling my research. But please, feel free to go on.
It's going to be interesting because here's something. The Browns always played man. The Ravens played zone. Zone fits right into the strength of the Texans offense. So if they move Collins around like they did last week, and just let Stroud do his thing, and Stroud can continue to play, I mean, I don't think that the Ravens will be able to stop Nico and Collins as a.
If Marlon Humphrey was playing, I would say they'd have a chance. And Brandon Stevens, to his credit, he stopped Deebo Samuel and he stopped Calvin Ridley. But when you think of Brandon Stevens, you don't think of a star corner. When you think of star corners in the Ravens, you think of Marlon Humphrey, and he's out for this game, just like in week 1.
Yeah.
So that's why Nico could have a field day. And the Ravens, 3 of their 7 corners are out. Texans have every receiver at full health except Tank Dell. So
if you remember watching the game last week, they would move Nico around, so he might not even have been on Humphreys unless Humphreys would go to the coach and say, "Hey, I'm on Humphreys. I'm following him everywhere." And then in that case, Nico would be, blanketed by Humphreys in that scenario.
yeah.
But the way they were moving him around, if they keep moving him around, and this is why the Texans offensive coordinator is being mentioned for head coaching interviews, is because he adapted to the situation. And if he keeps adapting, and I think he may have stumbled onto something Nico Collins is really good at, and if he keeps doing that, it's going to create problems for the Ravens.
Yeah.
Because, it is very difficult, and if a team that was 4 and 5 deep at corner last week couldn't stop him.
Well, the Browns didn't have Grant Delpit at strong safety. They didn't have Delpit at strong safety. They did get Thornhill back at free safety for his first game back, but they did not have Delpit. So.
Yeah, they didn't have Delpit, and that did make a difference. I mean, anybody who says that it didn't make a difference is, probably doesn't know what they're talking about. And I think the Ravens are going to be, aren't the Ravens fully healthy at safety?
Yes, but they are depleted at corner. 3 of their top 7 corners are out.
Yeah.
So and here's the thing, of the AFC North teams that Stroud has faced, the only injury the Steelers had when they lost 30-6 was Cameron Hayward. The Bengals were fully healthy when Stroud beat the Bengals on the road. All 11 of their Bengals' best starters were healthy in that game. I would argue that was the toughest defense of the AFC North team Stroud faced, because Marlon Humphrey was out in week 1. He's out for this game. Tyus Bowser was out for both games. And the Browns didn't have a fully healthy defense either, and that's why Stroud won. And Stroud's currently 3-1 versus the AFC North, with his only loss coming to the Ravens.
Yeah, and that's tough. The AFC North.
But Stroud won the turnover battle in week 1. Lamar had a fumble lost and an interception in week 1. Stroud did not have any turnovers despite having a rough rookie outing.
Yeah,
and only scoring 9 points in the Ravens.
The thing that got me was that the Texans' interior offensive line played as well as they did. Because we knew they had that one hole, I think it was at right guard.
It was right tackle, because they had Kenyon Green suffering a season-ending injury at the beginning of the year, and then they moved George Fant to right tackle and moved Titus Howard to left guard. Howard got injured, so Juice Scruggs, who missed most of the season, came in at left guard, played well there. Dieter's been a staple at center, and Shaq Mason, the former Patriots guard and Buccaneers guard's been a staple at right guard for the Texans this year too. So yeah, Tunsil's been amazing.
Yeah, it's like they did some shotgun. Let's just put it that way.
No, we don't need to simplify things. These are very big details where,
They are very big details, but but they did a lot of shuffling on that offensive line, not as much as the Jets did. The Jets' offensive line was more than.
I would argue the Texans' offensive line in week 1 was about as bad as the Jets' offensive line at the end of the year, but the Texans were able to correct the course and turn things around with D'Amico Ryans and the culture and the belief he had in some of these guys who hadn't proven themselves. And then they proved themselves under D'Amico. That's the difference. Not taking anything away from Saleh. Great defensive mind, but Ryans just has more influence on his team than Saleh does, in my opinion. That's not a knock on Saleh. That's just D'Amico being D'Amico. Okay? But yeah.
So, D'Amico Ryans, there's a reason that he's being considered potentially the, coach of the year along with Kevin Stefanski. And that's, he just walked on and became one of the best coaches in the NFL. I mean, that's to do. So, I mean, there's a reason for that. And he's done a great job with it. And if he makes the same type of adjustments this week that he did last week, I mean, that's just another reason Texans maybe marching on to the AFC Championship after today.
What's your score for this game? Because I think even if the Ravens were to lose to the Texans, I think the Ravens are the odds-on favorite to win Super Bowl 59 at the moment. Because they're going to have Lamar back, their offensive line back. It's in New Orleans. I feel like Lamar Jackson's going to storm into New Orleans like Andrew Jackson, where Flacco won his only Super Bowl and lead the Ravens to a championship next season. I would go Ravens over Lions if I had to make a Super Bowl 59 prediction right now. And I know you'd hate to see the Lions get to the Super Bowl and then lose to the Ravens, who are a rival of your Browns. But I think the Browns, if Watson's healthy, I think the Browns could potentially meet the Ravens in the AFC Championship, where they would eventually lose to the Ravens. But it'd be a hell of a game. And Browns beat the Ravens in Baltimore. So
that would have been a great game for ratings, would be the Browns and Ravens. But I think this may be better for ratings because I think this, with C.J. Stroud playing the way he is and the Texans playing the way they are, they may be playing the best ball in the NFL right now. And they're going against the best team in the NFL right now. So, arguably.
And Denzel Perriman, who you didn't mention, led the NFL in tackles with 135 on the year.
Yeah. And also, let's not forget, Perriman was awesome last week. They held the Browns to 50 yards rushing on 20 carries, and Perriman was a big part of that.
Yeah.
I mean, Perriman was amazing last week. So let's not, poo-poo that, because the Ravens have a great running team, and Perriman's going to be key to stopping that. And I think the Ravens lose this one. I think Texans take it, and I think they take it by touchdown.
I've got the Ravens 28-21. Is that going to be your score, except with the Texans winning?
I'm going to go 38-31.
All right. That is most of our segment for this Ravens-Texans video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, Draft Utopia. I'll leave everybody else's predictions up on the site one more time, 28-21, and then everybody else's scores. So we're going to end this stream, but we're going to start the next stream. And I'm going to turn my lights on because it's hard to see my face in the live stream. So I'm going to do that now so that it's easier to see my face moving forward.